May every sound heard be the sound of consciousness awakening. May every blink of our eyes allow us to see that we are all one. May every word spoken be words filled with compassion. May every beat of our hearts allow us to love unconditionally, and may every step taken bring the world closer to peace. And I like to say that just about every single day. And I think if we all kind of did something along those lines, that it would just be a lot kinder of a world.
Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin back again. And today we have another special guest with us. We have Cheryl T. Campbell from her self-titled YouTube channel. Now, she is a spiritual guide, author, speaker, helping people align their spiritual path with their entrepreneurial success.
Cheryl T. Campbell. Great name. Great name. Yeah, she looks interesting and gentle and kind and nice and like a nice, wise, gentle, kind teacher.
Yeah.
And so if you're up for that, hopefully that's what you get.
All right, let's get into it. All right, Cheryl T. Campbell, thank you so much for being on the show. It is great to have you. We've checked out your YouTube channel. Pretty fascinating stuff you got on there. But maybe for our audience out there, I think you could do a better job. Let them maybe know a little bit about who you are and what you're doing with your social medias.
Well, I've actually been in the internet world for over a decade. It's a very, very long time, but I always taught entrepreneurship and I taught business, mostly to female entrepreneurs. But in 2025, in the very, very beginning, I just felt like I was called to talk about my spiritual journey. I had, was in the middle of publishing a book about my journey. And I just found more and more that people were needing to hear some of the information that we all have to share. And I'm sure you're very aware of that people are just really searching right now for answers and everything else. And I don't think any of us necessarily have answers, but we do definitely have our shared experiences. So that's what my YouTube station is about, is me sharing what I've been going through over the past many years, hopefully making somebody else's journey a little bit easier.
You have such a gentle approach in your content. It's very gentle. It comes off as soft, warm, and very easy to take in. Where does that come from? Where does that gentleness come from?
I honestly have no idea. It's just, I don't know if I've always been that way, but I think that the more that I've gone through my journey, is an additional sense of calm has come over me. And I think maybe that's what you're seeing a little bit.
Yeah.
There's not that much that ruffles my feathers anymore.
That's awesome. That's like an authentic temperament, and just the internet definitely needs that. I do this thing where on my playlist of music, I cycle between like heavy metal and like lame Christian rock, and then maybe something, melodic and whatever. And sometimes on the internet, you'll find, some political debate, and then you just need, you need to smell that bowl of coffee beans. You need a palate refresher, or you need a different perspective or some gentleness. Like, it's very, I don't know, schizoid, but I feel like that's like the internet in a nutshell. It's just all these voices, and they all have their place. And, no pressure to stay that way. I'm also cool with people going, you know what, forget it. Tomorrow I'm Breaking Bad and I'm going to be a radical person tomorrow. Nobody has to be anyway, but it's a definite, nice, safe haven to find somebody like yourself that can talk calmly about things and with such understanding about things. Like, I caught part of one of your videos about the stuff that doesn't usually get talked about after awakening. You know what I mean? Like, definitely needed. Definitely something people need to hear about. Maybe we could even get into that a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course we can. But it's interesting when you say you like to listen to all different kind of stuff. That's all the voices that do need to be heard today, because I think that's part of the whole awakening process, actually, is hearing all of these different perspectives and really deciding on what is important to you and what you identify with. And, and going from there, because I don't think there's any bad, and I don't think there's anything, good that you have to split, split it, that it all is just necessary. And if you just go into any of it with an open heart, you're going to get something out of it. And that's how I think we're all going to work more towards unity consciousness, is how we accept one another, regardless of whether we believe in what you believe in.
Definitely, definitely. You know, well, knowing humans, it'll probably be messy, but maybe it could be messy and stable, you know?
We can only hope.
You know what I mean? Rather than chaos, you know. But it's just real, and just time we live in is so interesting, you know, with all this accessibility to all these voices, you know what I mean? And like you said, like approaching it with understanding and seeing what resonates and when it resonates, and you know, I don't know. I've said before, I wouldn't go back a week. I wouldn't go back 2 years. I wouldn't go back to some other time. You know, life has had lots of challenges, but like they all provided like a learning towards just exactly now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And you just nailed it there, because if I ever revisited all of the mistakes that I made in my life,
Right?
I would drive myself crazy. But looking at the past doesn't do you any good,
Really?
unless you just, simply realize that that creates the person that you are today.
Yeah.
And, I like the person I am today, and it looks
Yeah.
like you guys do too. So,
Yeah.
no regrets.
Yeah, and it's like the funny thing about it is like I think that's a personal thing. I heard something recently that resonated with me. It was a statement like happiness isn't an external project, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to fall into the trap of that. Like I think that's like most people probably at some point in their life, totally understandable. Like I know what I'll do. I'll build up this facade of myself because, whatever, I can't be bothered with everything going on in here.
Yeah.
But that's prolonging, I think, it's prolonging a reconciliation on the inside that's like, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. And so what is going on here? I've been living in the past and the future for so long. What the heck's right here?
Yeah.
And
And
then,
I think you just named a really, really key point about it all, because if you don't realize that you're completely responsible for your own everything, your own happiness, your own everything, your own abundance. I mean, because if you keep on looking outward, you're just never going to share and get what you're really supposed to be. Your soul's calling, in a different way of putting it, and that I think is one of the first steps of really waking up a little bit, is realizing that you are responsible. Every decision that you make is yours to make. And, you may not be able to control what somebody else does, but you certainly can control the way that you react to it. And, we all are human. I still get triggered on a bunch of different things. And I think the difference is that the more that you look inward, the more you're capable of realizing that you're getting triggered, and that you're really just reflecting something inside yourself that needs to be looked at.
yeah.
And it allows you to calm down a little bit. And for me, it allows me to pause before I speak a lot of
Yeah,
times.
we were just before this started,
Yeah.
I was talking about like the final frontier of suffering, because as you gain a little more insight and maybe a little more presence, and you become present enough to just through presence not make a lot of the same mistakes over and over and over again, or fall victim into like reactivity. The final frontier, I was saying, seems to be like, well, what still triggers? And it was like, family's a big one. And not because family's bad or something. I just think it's because it's the roots of that go so deep. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, you'll be like, I don't get it. Like, I can run into somebody that might even be a jerk out in the world, and it doesn't have the effect it did when I was in my 20s. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but something about somebody you've known for decades or something like that, there's just this weird link to the part of you that knew each other forever ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That just, I think honestly, the prescription's the same as everything else. Sit with it. Don't go anywhere. Don't abandon that part or distract yourself out of it. See it for what it really is and what it has to
Really is.
say. And
Yeah.
I get the sense that even that is like, it couldn't be okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, family and everything is such a different perspective if you look at it, that it's all soul contracts that we make before we even, go into our human form. They're soul contracts that we make with one another. And, are those contracts for us to learn the lessons that we choose to experience in this lifetime, And so some of those contracts I think are a little difficult. And it's definitely challenging and definitely worth growth, though. It's like I know that a lot of my changes have come from, my closest family members. Because for years, I'm the only one that was going through what I was going through, what I call the awakening. And for decades, I was called woo-woo, and, I was called a whack job, and all of this different stuff, and I think as you go through that kind of stuff, you just learn more about who you really are and what you're here for and everything else. But family is definitely an interesting thing because it's where our heart is,
Yeah.
and we have the most to learn from one another, I think, when we're that close.
Some of those
Yeah,
contracts,
that's
I can
true.
see people looking through and being like, man, I don't think I read that thing through before I just decided
Well, I
to.
want to talk about soul contract
Yeah.
because that comes up, you know what I mean? Like that's a term that like I don't know. I don't ponder or ruminate or think about the idea of soul contracts too much, but that term has come across our paths and my path so many times, the idea of a soul contract. Could you talk in more detail about the reality of that?
Well, it's just, again, I'd like to say this one thing before we go any further.
Sure.
Everything that I say is please take with a grain of salt. Take what resonates, leave the rest.
Yeah.
Because this is just what I have come to. I call it a knowing. It's like you grow into it and you contemplate it, and all of a sudden it's just such clarity that you just know it's part of your reality. But for me, soul contracts are, you could picture all of us sitting around the kitchen table, but before we're on Earth, and saying, I want to experience this with you, and I think I could learn this from you. And hey, you were my dad in the last lifetime, and maybe this time I'm going to be, your father or whatever. And you just contemplate everything, and you come up with the scheme of things, and like, what does your soul need to grow more towards, oneness, because that's what it is all about, because we are all one, but each part of us have something that we want to experience and we want to expand. And when you come here, because I also don't believe that everybody just chooses to come to Earth. I think the human experience is unique in our galactic overview of everything. But so when you choose to come into human form, you choose who your family's going to be. At some point, we sat down and we said, you know what? I'm going to be on your podcast because that's what you're going to do. You're going to have a podcast, whatever. And for me, though, when you look at these soul contracts, you still have all of your own free will. So when you come here and you start experiencing things, it's also up to you to decide, is that contract still good for me? And if it's not, it's time to end it. Because just because you have a contract doesn't mean that you can't break that contract. And so if you're in a relationship that you don't want to be in, and you learned the lessons that you felt like you needed to learn, and it's time to end it, you end it. But you end it with love. Everything if it comes from the heart, and everything if it's heart-based, is, for the good. But yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question about that, but I do think that we all have something to learn from one another, but we decide that. It's like an architectural plan or a blueprint, and then it's up to you on what direction you take it to, and
I'm ending up at this point now because there's got to be hundreds and hundreds of hours of me jibber jabbering, blibber blabbering on here. And I'm getting to this weird point now where, like, conversationally and everything, like, don't get me wrong, this is not a critique of this conversation at all, but I'm like, I was saying to James before these even started that I'm like, what is this? What are we doing? You know what I mean? Like I had this like really anal retentive tendency for such a large chunk of my life about precision. What is objectivity, and what is like epistemologically correct or ontologically correct? What is precise and right and correct and all this stuff? And it just doesn't. It's such an odd domain when it comes to interpersonal social dynamics with people that it becomes absurd.
Yeah.
And to the point where, you know what I mean, where I don't know
Yeah.
if it's liberation, or I don't know if it's like tragic or what it is, but I just go, I don't even barely know, like, what do you say? What is important to say? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like, do you know what I'm talking about? I know that
I,
even what I said barely makes any sense,
but
but
I do understand what you mean,
yeah,
and I think all of us come from backgrounds that we needed to release. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if you know this about me, and it may surprise you if you don't, but I spent years in the hazardous waste field as a regulatory expert.
So you know
So,
bullshit, you know shit.
it was like regulations, regulations, regulations. Everything was by the book,
Oh,
and I'm the
okay, yeah,
farthest thing from by the book that you could ever
yeah.
imagine today. But yeah, I think that's what all of us are just trying to figure out too.
I
Is
love it.
what is it all about?
I love finding people like yourself, or some of these other characters we've interviewed, and just the community of people online where it's a similar sentiment. You know what I mean? It's almost like, can we acknowledge how much of a wacky kaleidoscopic acid trip this thing is, and drop the pretense of certainty? You know what I mean? Drop the sort of pretense of, like, I don't know, we call it certainty addiction. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's like I think an earnest desire for that. But then you start talking as if things are away again. You know what I mean? And then behold.
Yeah, and I,
Right?
I think when you stop looking for the certainty, that's where the real growth
Yeah.
steps in.
Yeah.
When you actually just realize that, not to get into, because my I have a lot of faith, but I'm not a religious based faith, and so but I believe we're all divine. And when we start recognizing that we are, then you realize that it's okay not to know where you're going. It's okay not to have that absolute definitive plan that you have to have every answer of what's coming up. And actually, that that drives my husband crazy that I feel that way. But
But that
but yeah,
might
when
ruin the
you
game. That's like having all the cheat codes. If you knew everything, if you
yeah
knew where everything was going, you might just plug yourself back into not knowing again, because you just feel like, what fun is knowing everything?
Yeah, and it's not, and what kind of stress does it put in your life too when you have to plan
Yeah.
everything down to the little dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's, and
It seems
that
like
just takes the fun out of it.
it seems like laughably clear that you can't know everything though, too.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, even like, there's some bold claims out there, and I'm not here to criticize them, but like, I'll take notice if somebody's like, look, through some sort of transcendent experience, I met God, or I understood things that I can't even talk about. You know what I mean? Or something. And it's like, I'm not denying what you're saying, but all right, start speaking in Japanese. And they're like, I can't. It's like, so you don't know everything then. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
maybe you know how the universe works, and you understand what it is to be God and literally create everything, but you're a human right now. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And you're limited, and but we do this sort of deluded thing as humans where we think everything that's important enough to know we can know. And I'm going, that seems so constrained and restricted and frustrating and understandable. And like, under that kind of like deluded approach, I actually even understand it. Like, you want to be certain and safe. But I do believe through that it's possible to like kind of see through that like illusion, and then sort of what is it called? Surrender
hmm
to really what's going on, which is far more mysterious. Like, even if you know what it is, it's maybe it's like, it's mysterious, but I have knowledge of that mystery. Like, I can rest in knowing of this mystery. It's familiar
hmm
mystery to me. It's not
right.
scary or something
And
like that.
earlier I mentioned that sometimes I just have a knowing, and it's like my knowings aren't going to be your knowings, though.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
that's why I always say, take what resonates and leave the rest behind, because
Yeah.
all of us have our own knowings, and it's because of the depth of who we truly are. I mean, we're definitely not souls in the human, body. It's in the sense of, I think I may have said that backwards, but it's like a lot of people think that we're humans with soul, and it's the soul that happens to just be having the human experience at the time. And that's a pretty big thing to contain,
Mm.
in this little tiny body. And so, I think if we knew everything that we really knew, you would just explode.
You seem to have a very practical approach to a lot of your content, which seems to be trying to guide people, help people out. And I really want to get into some of that. Maybe we can talk about what's recently going on in your work. But before we just jump into that, I thought it might be cool to just ask you about any mystical experiences maybe that you've had that shocked you, even yourself. I know the stuff can kind of get personal sometimes, so share whatever you feel comfortable with. But have you had any kind of
You
deep
know,
mystical experiences?
I wouldn't say deep mystical, but there's been so many things throughout the course of my life. As far as, all the clairs, I did have an experience I mean, decades ago, I guess now, because I was in my 20s. But I was driving into New York to visit a friend that worked for the airlines. And we were staying over at their apartment. They all shared an apartment together, all the people that worked for the airline. And when I got there, I got out of the car and this thought went through my head like super, super quick. And it was like, take your cassette. I had just bought a new cassette, Les Miserables, all right, and I loved the music of that play. And so I took it out, or it said, take it out, so when the car gets stolen, you don't have to replace it. And it happened so quickly that I'm laughing at myself and I start walking away. And then the thought again, super quick in my head, go get your stuff out of the car so when it's stolen, you don't have to replace it. All right. And it happened so quickly. I laughed at myself. I turned around, got it out of the car, locked the car, went inside. Next morning, car is gone. And so that kind of thing. And then another time that a voice popped into my head like that, it was super clear. And I was traveling down to Cape Ann to go for a camping trip. And as I'm driving, it was pre-phone in cars. I had a thought that you have to call home. You got to find a phone, find a phone, find a phone, find a phone. And I'm driving, and there's like a rest stop, rest stops are every 20 to 30 miles or whatever. And I'm getting more and more anxious. You got to call home, call home, call home, call home. And when I did call home, I ended up finding out that my sister-in-law was in a near fatal accident. And so, things like that have popped in that, for me at the time were dramatic, because it was like, oh my God, I can't believe I really, thought that, and something came of it. But other little things, like a year and a half ago, I found a painting in my attic. And it was one I did several years ago when I was playing with watercolors. And it meant nothing to me at the time. I was like, oh, this is it. Why'd I paint this? And when I look at it now, I found it and I have it framed and on my shelf, because it's dolphins flying in the water. And it's like dolphins really speak to me. And I was told that, some of my galactic lives were all related to, the water and the dolphins and everything. So little things like that. But for something dramatic, nothing I can really think of. Just little moments, seeing a manta ray while you're scuba diving, and it's, the wingspan is massive, and you realize, wow.
I'm sure there's
you
a
know
lot of people out there that can they feel what you're taught. Like even as you were telling some of those, I remember certain experiences in my own life that I've talked about on here, kind of like what you're talking about. What is that? What do you chalk that up to when you have those experiences and they're just so strange, but it's like this intuitive thing within you See, like, what is that? What is the universe
I
doing?
I think you just said it. It is our intuition because we have so many senses that we don't use and so many abilities and so many gifts that we walk with, but we don't allow ourselves to walk with them. And we've been taught ever since we were little kids, you don't do that. You don't, stop that. That's fake. Or, that's bull and everything else. And we're taught not to honor the feelings that we get. And as I'm saying that, there was one time that I was biking a route that I'd biked 100 times before. And this one time, all of a sudden, the back of my neck, just all these pricklies, the back of my neck happened. And if I didn't trust my intuition and immediately turned around and went back the other way as fast as I could, I don't know if I'd be here today because it was that much of a sensation that something was wrong. And so I think we're just taught not to trust our intuition, and that's what it is, though. It's people say, oh, a gut feeling. Well, that's intuition. You have somebody that's constantly on your mind that you're thinking about, that's intuition. What's going on with them? Maybe they need, an ear. They need to talk or whatever. But we have so many little signals that we just overlook all the time. I had a recent experience, and I won't get into details about it because it's not my story to tell, except I was hosting a rather large party. And something happened that when I found out what happened, I had an instant gut reaction. Cancel the party. You can't have the party. And I talked myself out of it, go, no, don't be ridiculous. And then I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and sat bolted up and said, you've got to cancel the party. And so I canceled the party. And I don't know if anything would have happened, but it was, a situation where I wasn't willing to give it, give it any,
Yeah.
chance of happening. Because why did I have that reaction? Why did I have it multiple times? And did it make any sense to anybody else? Probably not. But I've learned to trust my instincts. And I think, if all of us do learn to listen just to our inner voices, even a little bit, you'd be surprised what you may be hearing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that it would be good for a lot of people to do is even develop some sort of trust in their instincts or a trust in their intuition in large part. But as humans, it's interesting. It's like I don't really have access to speaking languages other than what I was immersed in. Like but I didn't invent the English language. I have access to a certain moral code because that's what I was raised in. I'm just talking about conditioning here and how that plays into intuition, like conditioning versus intuition. Like,
Mhm.
there's a famous story about Carl Jung where I don't know if you've ever heard this. It's like where he coined the phrase synchronicity, and it was when the woman she was a really tough study, and she didn't believe in like she was rigid in her capacity to be open minded about like paranormal type stuff, or just she wasn't even up for dream analysis. But he was like, "Come on, just tell me about your dream." And she was like, "Well, I had this dream where there was a scarab in my dream." And right as she was talking about this scarab, like an Egyptian scarab, Carl Jung opened the window and a scarab flew into his hand and he went, "Here's your scarab." And it broke something in her and she like they could move forward with the therapy. But then I had to deconstruct that. And I looked into it and there's like a likelihood of a certain type of scarab that's actually indigenous to that area. I'm not trying to just simply be a party pooper. What I'm saying is all things, even awakening, can be scienced from a certain perspective where you could
Mhm.
overlay science over it and go, look at what the nervous system's doing. Look at what parts of the brains light up in enlightened monks or somebody having a non-dual experience. But that still doesn't deny the profundity of the experience itself or the potential that God's at work or any of that.
Mhm.
But within the framework of some explanatory scientific thing, I think what's interesting about that intuition thing is you might ask, well, why don't people trust their intuition? Why don't people trust their gut more often? And it's because, like so many things, so many like paradoxical things within this reality, humans co-regulate each other socially. So we get together and everybody's intuition isn't the same. And sometimes we get caught up in something that is necessary for like survival to continue or social survival to continue. And then we mistake our social role with who we are when no one's looking. And so I
Right.
just top it off with this final thing. I love the story of this guy. He was a public speaker. I think he was like some sort of political public speaker. And he would go around and he always had this like berating, moralizing character. And he was like really stuffy, rigid guy. And then in his off time, somebody saw him at a local pub like dancing and letting loose. And they went, "You're a fraud, man. Like, what the heck? You go around town to town talking and stuff." And he goes, "That's for them. This is for me." And at the end of the day, I think that that's the reality. It's like anyone could say anything. And there's been people with fancy robes and hats as tall as the ceiling saying things since the dawn of time. But at the end of the day, I think it's like, between you and me, trust your intuition sometimes and like give it a good look at. Don't
Yeah.
necessarily ignore it because strange things can happen, like even myself, I've had similar things. I'm an artist and I've drawn pictures that I was telling you before this happened. I drew a picture of Donald Trump like forever ago. And it was just like there was an American flag over the world, and it was this like sort of satire thing, like a Mero world. Like this guy would want to take over the world if he wanted to. I'm not here to like criticize that or like get all political or something. I'm not going that way. But I'm saying I've drawn pictures that years later I went, look at where my head was at way before anything was going on.
Yeah.
And then I was telling my spouse that one time, and they go, "Yeah, but like, so was a lot of other people." Like, what I mean? Look at how ahead of the curve I was with this. And they were like, "Yeah, but you might have just been tapping into something a lot of people feel." And I'm saying there's an oscillation between understanding and mysticalness. Like
Mhm.
how can we science this and how can we free fall into the practical experience of it or something like that,
Yeah. But I think the cool
framing
thing
it a
is
bunch of
that
different
today
ways.
science is catching up with an awful lot of this.
Yeah.
That they're studying sacred sacred geometry.
Yeah.
Now, that's a little fear that I have, by the way, is stumbling over my words. That's something that I still have left over from a childhood speech disorder.
Oh,
And it used to stop me from talking in public.
you're natural.
Now I have to kind of laugh at it because and I still catch myself not being able to say certain words, but it's
Have
what
you
it
heard the
is.
world leaders? Some of the nonsense they say, and they don't skip a beat. They just keep going with it like nothing even just happened. Yeah, I think you're great at speaking. Yeah.
Well, I want to get into what you're kind of like working on these days. What like you've got your book, you got your channel, and you've been releasing like a steady stream of content. But what are you into right now that we could talk about?
What's interesting is that every time that I put down what I'm going to be doing, it changes, quite honestly. When I decided to shut down all of my courses that I had on teaching marketing and all of that other stuff, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I kind of fell into teaching what I had been teaching before, but on a spiritual level. And so I started working with light workers and teaching them how to market in a way that was in alignment with them. So I did all of that last year. And I was intending on continuing with that, but all of a sudden I started the channel and started the conversations that, I talk about. And it's kind of staring down another road again because I'm finding that so many people are just in this stage, like, they've gone through the beginning of the whole awakening process, but they're kind of not stuck in the middle, but they don't know what to do with it. Like, they don't know how to ground it. They don't know how to embody it. And a lot of people are in pain. I mean, I had a video that went, a lot of views in a very short period of time. And it wasn't put out on purpose that I put it out at Christmas time. I was just very off schedule because I do a lot of entertaining over the holidays. And I didn't get to it when I wanted to, but I wanted to get one up before the holidays. So I put it up and I think the reason why it struck a chord with so many people is because it was the holidays, and people are often, more vulnerable at that time. And so I came home Christmas Eve to, I don't know, 500 comments, on this one video, and people were pouring their hearts out. And at first I felt really bad because there was no way that I could answer everything. But there was a definite line going through it all, and that is that I'm discovering that people don't know how to stabilize themselves, and they don't know how to connect with their learning about spirituality and, with living with your head up in the cosmos, and then how to actually ground yourself back into your human reality. And so I very quickly put an audio program together on stabilizing yourself, and how to ground yourself when you're going through all of this. And so I had no intent of going down that road, but I just see that that's what people are saying that they need. And so I'm trying to listen to what the comments are, and I'm trying to, I won't say analyze the comments, but see the common threads that are going through it. And I'm going to be creating, probably a membership area, I would think, that has some of these different levels that they can choose what would help them the most. But, it seems to be a pretty consistent theme that people have to figure out how to live with the knowledge of being a spiritual person on the level that we are going through this great awakening. And then the reality of being human, and still having all of these human emotions and everything, and being triggered. And I just don't think anybody talks about the fact that that's okay. We are human. That's why we're here, to experience all of this. And so if you don't address the fact that it's messy, and that it could be painful and it could be lonely, then people feel like they're all alone, and they feel like there's something wrong with them. And, so I didn't expect to do what I, thinking of contemplating about doing, but I'm trying to figure out how to put something together that will help them realize that it's okay and it's normal, and, there's nothing wrong with you, and it's okay if you don't have somebody else around you that is going through it too, but yeah, there's a lot of loneliness, a lot of pain, that I'm finding out with the people that are watching.
Well,
and
there's two things there, because with the stabilizing thing, I feel like people are getting way more information shot at them right now than I think any time in human history. And that's destabilizing. I found it in my own life, man.
Yeah.
Like everyone's scrolling, and you've got like all these opinions from all types of angles. And I think they're just frazzled by over consuming information.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one. And then another thing would be that if they're trying to like integrate like spiritual awakening, spiritual principles into like business, which is like that system is so outdated and corrupt, and so how do you like integrate like spiritual ethics with corrupt business? It's like no wonder you've got such a
And you just said exactly why, why I shut down that part of my business, because I always felt that I had to teach the marketing the proper way. This is what you do, and blah, 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 blah. And, I'm going to say that it's a very masculine energy. And that's good, because you need the masculine energy for the structure, when you're dealing with business. But the thing that we were always missing is the feminine energy and the child energy. And so, when I was shutting everything down, that's when JJ convinced me, she didn't really have to convince me. She told me to contemplate this, and it was like, why didn't I see that? It was like, duh. But, how you do need to approach it differently, and you don't have to follow those outdated rules, because they are all going away. And you have to do what feels right, and you have to speak your truth, even in your marketing. And I had been doing that for a long time for myself, but I wasn't teaching it because I thought I was like weird, and it wasn't justified to teach it that way, But you know, with the everything that people are going through, there's actually a third factor, and that's what the universe is delivering to us now with all of this massive energy that we're receiving, with the alignment of these planets that haven't happened in thousands of years, and everything is just forming around us right now that is, gonna hit you over the head whether you are aware of it or not. And I think that's also why a lot of people are uncomfortable right now, because they don't realize that, they're being exposed to all of this energy, and we are energy beings, and if you're not aware of it and you don't understand what's going on, I think it could be painful versus a little bit easier on you if you understand what's going on. So that's another thing I've been playing with, is like, how do you connect, the up here with the down here, as above, so below, but connect it so people could actually understand what the conversation is, and how you do stabilize yourself, and how you ground yourself, and, what tools that you can use, but not make it feel like homework. Because that's the other thing that I think a lot of people find. It's like, I have to meditate every day or I'm, a bad person. And I can't ever get mad at somebody, or I'm a bad person. And, I just took a step backwards in my journey. And, people are still criticizing themselves so much when they don't need to be.
That's hilarious. Stressed out about meditating. Like totally conceivable thing. But here's the thing. I love me a good guided meditation. Like, I don't know, however awakened somebody was, if your nervous system is calm enough that you couldn't get something out of a guided prompting meditation, where it's like, all right, let me guide you through, to pay attention to your hands now, and then your feet, and if pressure your body here and all that, with like a gentle, non-frantic voice. I get a lot out of that, so much so that what is gotten out of that is transferable over to the more hectic parts of my life. Or like, oh, I remember how to calm my nervous system down, so I can even do that with awareness while I'm driving. Like, not dangerously, which is like, if you think about a lot of the times driving, you're like, what the heck? I was driving and making turns and doing all this stuff without even like paying attention to what I was doing. But if you can actually be present, and it's not like you've learned through like a very pleasant, enjoyable form of meditation how to stabilize your nervous system through grounding. Like, I don't know if you do it or not, but you seem like the type of person that would probably be good at like delivering guided meditations, and that, to me, that's such a value, a variety of them, the
Yeah.
ability to do that, and an important skill, the
Yeah.
grounding and stabilizing aspect of things.
Yeah, I am planning on doing more of that. I used to do that, but only in my private communities.
Yeah.
And, because, I had a lot of fear going on, with the voice issue, speaking my voice and everything, because of, the ridicule from being a kid, and that kind of stuff sticks with you for a very long time. And it wasn't until a little over a year ago that I came out of behind the scenes, like the private, the private groups and everything, and said, enough already. And so let's just start doing this.
Yeah.
But on the meditations, I'm putting together, it was one of these things I was struggling with, trying to figure out which way to take everything. And, you just wake up in the middle of the night with these words that pop into your head. And for me, it was called Serenith Rising. And I don't know why, but that spoke to me. And so that's what my membership is going to be. And it's going to have that kind of stuff in it, the guided meditations and everything. But when I was saying that, you're stressed out about meditating, I'm talking about like some of the groups that I was in over the years. It's like guided meditations aren't considered meditation. Right. True meditation is you sit there and
I don't even sit up straight ever when I meditate. Like, I go I'm always lying down. And if I fall asleep, good. I don't care. I don't care if I fall asleep. There's plenty of time meditating where I'm not asleep. Like, but I'm present, and I'm like, and then maybe you open your eyes, and I actually think you can perform tasks and be in a meditative sort of noticing state
Oh, absolutely.
Life will pass you by otherwise. Like, you know what I mean? You're going to ignore that sunset on your way
Yeah,
home
no.
from work or
Some
whatever.
of my most profound meditations have been when I've been out walking,
Yeah.
and walking in nature, and just all of a sudden you notice, something you hadn't noticed before. And like the other day, I was outside, and for the first time in years, we've lived on our property for since 2000, all right? And I saw an owl for the first time, just sitting in my tree. And he let me watch him for a good 30 minutes. I'm just sitting there gazing at him, and it felt very meditative.
Yeah.
But the thing is that was so interesting about it is that he didn't just show up. He's been living in my trees somewhere for a while. He just didn't fly in for that moment. And so all of a sudden, though, it's like, is it all the walks outside and all the oneness with nature that allowed me to see him?
And I've got an owl on my dresser.
Yeah.
I do.
I don't know, we were talking a little bit before about some experiences. One of the coolest things, and I did write about this, but one of the coolest things ever was I do like to be outside a lot. And so in the summertime, I take the meditation outside. And for me, it's sitting on my lawn and just looking at everything. And sometimes I do kind of, I close my eyes and I just let my thoughts float around and everything. And I had a really interesting couple of weeks because it all happened all at once that all of a sudden I started with light language. And I'm like, what the hell is this? It's like I had no idea what it was. I hadn't heard of it. And so that happened one week. And then another time I'm sitting there and I was really tired. I hadn't slept well. And so I'm like kind of nodding off outside, my eyes closed. And of course I'm calling it meditation. But, I nod off a little bit. And when I come up, I look over and I'm looking right at a coyote. And the
awesome.
coyote is
It's
just sitting there, like, how, your dogs sit up like so proud. That's how he was sitting. He was just sitting so up and proud. And he just looked at me. And it's like we kind of gazed into each other's eyes from like 20 feet apart. And all of a sudden, he just kind of went like this, flipped his head a little bit and turned around and went back into the woods.
Yeah.
And it was the coolest thing. It really
cool.
was.
I get it. I get why that's cool. It reminds me of a story somebody told me where they were like, they loved the nighttime. So they were like sitting on their back porch and they fell asleep and they woke up hours later in the middle of the night and the sky was just scattered with so many stars. Like they woke up to, I don't know if you've ever, like everybody's seen the sky. It depends on if you lived in the city your whole life, but if you've gone further enough and they live outside of the city, you go far enough, the sky is unbelievable sometimes at night. The stars, it's like awe-striking. And they said they've went to bed and then they woke up and were confronted with that beaming down on them. And I was like, yeah, I get it. That would be awe-inspiring. That would be cool,
Yeah.
Little things like that, If you're very present in a moment like that, you wake up to a coyote looking at you.
Yeah. When I told my mother about it, I was so excited, and she turned, "Oh, are you safe?
Yeah. Well,
Are you
be
okay?"
safe too. Don't sleep outside. Yeah, let's not do that.
I'm like, Mom, I wasn't even the slightest bit scared. It was like just this awesome connection,
Yeah.
Some majestic bear, you're like reaching out to touch its fur. No. Yeah. Well, I want to give you a chance to kind of like plug your book. Maybe you could give us the title and just tell us a little bit about your book.
Thank you. The book is called Voices, Stepping Out of the Darkness and Into the Light. And the interesting thing about that book is that I came up with the title 2020. All right, because I had actually put up on my Facebook page that I had a book coming out and I was getting ready to write it, and it was called Voices, Stepping Out of the Darkness and Into the Light. And at this point, I don't even remember what the concept was because it certainly isn't what it ended up being. And all of a sudden, I fell into this publishing deal, and that was just a really interesting experience too. It was a huge learning curve because I might as well have been self-published completely because they didn't do anything, But the book wrote itself. I mean, all of a sudden, like these little things would happen the opening chapter. I met a friend down at the beach for coffee, and we're just talking and catching up because we hadn't seen each other in a year. And all of a sudden, her name is Lisa, she turns around to me and she goes, "Why the hell are we here?" And I was like, "Do you really want me to give my take on that?" And it just started this whole conversation. And I went home, and all of a sudden, 30 minutes after I got home, I had the first chapter written. And then the coyote thing happened one day, and all of a sudden, I go dashing in the house a little bit later, and within an hour, I had a chapter written. And so the whole book, it's almost like the book channeled itself, because it was just, I had no intention of sharing the stories I shared or having stories happen that instantly got put on paper. But it is about my journey, and I have been going through my journey since I was in my very young years. My brother and I saw what we believe is a flying saucer when I was like 8 years old. And he was like, "I think we saw a flying saucer." And I'm like, "Of course we did." I mean, I didn't even question it. Of course we did. And, and then just through my teens and my 20s and my 30s, every single time there was something that was going on with me, and being called the woo-woo and all of this other stuff, and, how that affected me. And so it's just kind of a bunch of stories about little experiences that I happened to have. And, some of them when I were diving, like the manta ray is a story I tell in the book, just because it was just like this moment of being part of something else besides you. It was just that was a mystical experience for me. I just was wall diving, and I kept on getting this feeling like, look behind you, but it's just deep blue water back there because we were doing a wall dive. But I kept on being called, turn around. When I turned around, there was just this massive, massive manta ray. And, the wings on it, and it was just like in the midst of the water almost. And it was just an awe-inspiring moment. Like, everything is so much bigger than us.
Look at James's face. He'd be horrified. I would too. I'd be like,
yeah, and so, in the book, then it gets into other stuff that was, interesting as I was writing the book too. It's like I'm writing about being present, and it was, the book was due to the publisher, and I was still editing, and it's due in 2 days, but meanwhile, I keep on being called to write like 5 additional chapters. And so I'm like working round the clock, and I'm having so much fun, I don't even realize I'm doing it. But I'm talking about being present, and I'm so tired that I'm not present. And what do? I take an absolute complete wipeout because I wasn't present, and I broke my ribs. And so, of course, you have to write about that because I'm talking about being present and I'm not, And so the book sounds like it's all over the place, but it all ties together with the way that the stories build. And, we go from everyday experiences that everybody has to some of the deeper stories that happened to me. And then I talk a little bit about what I think the awakening process is, and a lot of the stuff that is in it with, generational and society things that are dumped on us, and how, we're being called to heal generational wounds. And, I talk about the light language, and that's nothing, I had never shared that with anybody. So I was taking, I won't say a huge risk, but yes, a huge risk that I had no idea what my family was going to do when they read this book, because I talked about things that they just did not know about me. The light language, the fact that I had some galactic experiences, with possible past lives type of thing, but not on Earth, And so some of this really way out stuff that people would say, but it just all happened. And it was being called to be written about. And so, as I said, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whenever it was, I came up with this title, but all of a sudden the book was something completely different. And it's been really well received. For a little while, it was in the top 2% of all of UK, and Canada for its
wow.
in Kindle, not just in its genre, but in Kindle. And so it's available in Kindle in softcover and
Heck
audio.
yeah.
I did an Audible book, and I did my own recording,
That's
and so
awesome.
that was interesting. That was quite the process. But yeah, so
What an
but yeah,
inspiration to a lot of people too. Like,
well,
that's inspiring. Was it fun to do? Like, was a lot of this fun?
it was all so fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it was unbelievably fun. Even with the stuff that happened in with the publisher and everything, and it was all that was really frustrating. But it made me learn how to do things that I didn't think I was capable of doing. And so it was a wonderful experience actually. And again, it's not my story to tell, but I will say this part of it, that I had wanted to, the whole purpose for doing the book was if one person's journey could be easier than mine was, then that was the inspiration for the book. And not too long ago, somebody that is very dear to me told me that it was the book that helped her get through a very difficult time. And that just made me bawl my eyes out, because when I was hoping to help somebody, I had no idea that it was going to help somebody that was so close to me. And one of the people that I was afraid would think differently of me because of what I was writing about.
Oh, wow.
So,
That is awesome.
yeah, and it's still,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
yeah,
I love a good story like that, It just it's a testament to, sometimes just like, you get these plans and a lot of people are afraid to take any action on the things that they really want to do, but sometimes you just take that step and you start making it happen. And I'm sure at some time, like the first time you started, writing or typing it down or whatever, it was probably strange, foreign to start like I'm writing a book now. And then it
well,
just like,
I had written a book in the past, and that was how you're describing, like do. And that's what was so different about this one, is that I didn't have to do any of that, because it was like something would happen and all of a sudden, boom. Or I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, I have to write about this, And so every single time a chapter wrote itself, the whole book wrote itself in the first 6 months of me doing it. And it wasn't until the editing stage, when the editor didn't show up, so I had to edit it myself, that that's when all of a sudden all these new chapters came out. And
That's the way to do it. That's the
yeah,
way to
even
do
like
it is like you said, like that's when your best stuff comes through. Because you compared the robotic version of it to the soulful version of it, like the authentic version of you. Your best stuff's going to come through, and I actually don't think that that's going to be some guaranteed. It's a miracle that that person read it and look at the clear result of it. It has an emotional response out of you.
yeah,
Something that I don't think like is the same effect that some person that is engineering and tailoring their book to have some sort of mass appeal, or like, you know, we're up 25% addiction level. You know what I mean? Like this is gonna get its hooks in. You know what I mean? It's not the same thing as when you write something that from your soul and somebody says, "Hey, I get you. I get this. And this actually enriched me." That's like, I could get emotional talking about that. You know what I mean? Like that's so resonated. It's ridiculous. And I do think that that's inspiring to somebody else out there that's like on the fence or mired down with logistics, that goes, forget the logistics for now. Just friggin' do it. You know what I mean? Like we all got to contribute in some way to like survive in this life.
yeah,
But make something soulful, not soulless. Make
yeah.
something soulful.
And that's where I really believe we're heading, though. I really
Yeah.
truly believe in my heart that that's what everybody is learning to do. They're learning that they have something that will help another person. And it doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to be, creating a podcast or a YouTube channel. It could just be being more present around your children, and letting your children, don't tell your child that's an imaginary friend. Stop that. Don't do this. You have to do this. Don't do this, and their awareness changes and they're different with their children. But all of us, I think, are coming to a point where we're realizing that everyone has something to offer humanity, and that you get a lot of joy out of helping others instead of being centered in your own little world. And I just think more and more people, and that's why I call, everybody calls it the awakening, but that's why I call it the awakening, because they're waking up to the fact that helping someone else is really helping yourself at the same time,
the
because it's
adventure
so
of a
wonderful.
lifetime. That's the
Yeah,
adventure of a lifetime, is to express yourself honestly. Like, you could travel the whole world with your fake ass self, or
hmm,
you could take the real daring, the real courageous step and be yourself where you live, knowing that people are going to call you woo, and knowing all these
yeah,
different things, and going, forget it, man. This is what's in my head. And then there's nothing more bold, there's nothing more daring. Like, I'm sure there's other bold and daring things than that, but I'm just saying it's bold and daring in its own right. And when somebody, take it or leave it, you've already won. If you've expressed yourself honesty, you win, check mark right away. But if somebody on top of that, even one person goes, hey, I liked your shit, I like that stuff you do, then that's like, I don't know what better thing could you want? That's such a deep connection with another human,
yeah,
you know? It starts with a connection with yourself, which is good
yeah,
enough,
yeah,
and then with the cherry on top, potentially connecting with even somebody else.
yeah. Though, I have to be honest, I said that video, that kind of, woof, up with the numbers and all of the comments and everything, I struggled with that because there was such an array of comments, and some of them were like, "Gee, great, thank you. I really needed to hear this." And people were sharing their spiritual journey and all happy and everything. But then there were the people that were just hurting so much,
Yeah.
and I felt just this huge weight of responsibility that I really struggled with it. I was so afraid that I was going to say something that was harmful,
Yeah.
and there were even a couple of comments that I reported because I thought they were self-harm,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I didn't even, I have to admit, I used AI for that because I didn't know how to approach this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And AI told me there's a YouTube thing and you could report,
Oh,
and they'll take over. And I was like, really? Okay, boom, But I struggled with that because,
oh,
it was the weight there, huge weight
oh,
all of a
AI is
sudden.
awesome for that, man. I don't know what kind of where it's gonna go, but I'm saying in the meantime, for a hefty role like that, you're like, wait a sec, I never said I was a licensed therapist. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
getting AI to do that, or even getting AI to go, help me make sense of this. Like, the
yeah,
way I rationalized our potential reach on this channel is, okay, I would be me if I was living in a small tribe of like 12 people. I would go into the middle of town and I'd probably speak my mind and go, but I'd be aware of some person to the side that looks distraught. And I might even go, hey, we're all neighbors. We only know the 12 of us. For all we know, there's only 12 humans on the planet. Is everything okay? And you might take a little bit of responsibility, but take that same voice and magnify it by several times. It's like, I can't, I mean, I'm just like, I'm not even going to put a disclaimer on everything. There's so many voices speaking out into the void at this point
yeah,
that, although I totally understand that weight that you're talking about, that's a real thing. You start getting concerned. But
yeah.
the fact is that we've all got like this megaphone now that we can speak out, and it just affects different people in different ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what I had to realize. And I had to
Yeah.
realize that as long as yeah, I call it stewardship, as long as I'm doing my due diligence and I'm not doing anything
Yeah.
intentionally harmful,
Yeah.
that it's not my weight to carry.
Yeah.
But it took me a couple of days to realize that. And during that couple of days, I was an absolute basket case,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh man, remember that our first bad comment? We had like a nervous breakdown. You know what I mean? Like, it was so lame, like years ago, like, because it was so biting and harsh, and it was just like, look at these two, blah blah blah. But then, I don't know, we got over it,
Yeah.
and then I'm sure there's been dozens, thousands, you know what I mean, of
Yeah.
nice comments and harsh ones, and
Yeah. Everything in between.
and that's true. It's one thing if it's like just somebody that's clearly hurting and so they're like lashing out or something like that. But it's another thing if somebody's like, you're sort of concerned. You're like, geez, you know what I mean? You all right?
Yeah.
Not always easy to know what to do, but it sounds like you handled that totally sensibly.
Hmm. Yeah.
I could
Well,
only hope.
Yeah.
Cheryl,
Your heart's in the right
I
place.
just want to say thanks so much for taking some time with us today to talk about your channel and everything you've experienced and sharing those experiences.
Yeah.
One thing we like to do here on the channel before we close out is kind of give our guests a final last say. If there's like one overarching message or one last thing you want to say to everyone who's watching out there, I'll give you the floor now, and then maybe when you're done that, you can just let them know where they can find you, what you got going on, and all that good stuff.
Okay. Actually, I'd like to share a little, it's a little blessing that I like to do every single day. All right. And so, of course, now that I said that, I'm probably not going to remember what it is, and I do it every single day. But I really have forgotten it. That's so funny. All right, this is it. May every sound heard be the sound of consciousness awakening. May every blink of our eyes allow us to see that we are all one. May every word spoken be words filled with compassion. May every beat of our hearts allow us to love unconditionally. And may every step taken bring the world closer to peace. And I like to say that just about every single day. And I think if we all kind of did something along those lines, that it would just be a lot kinder of a world. So, and we could all be kind to one another. It really is kind of fun.
Yeah. Excellently said.
Yeah.
Pristinely said.
Thank you.
In terms of like where our audience can find you at, where's that at?
My YouTube is Cheryl T. Campbell.
Okay.
And my website is CherylTCampbell.com. And that one leads you to my other stuff. It'll lead to, I have a website I do all of my stuff off of called Awaken Your Spiritual Path. But everything comes from the CherylTCampbell.com. So that'll get you wherever you need to go. And it has my contact information and information on the book and everything else too. So.
Beautiful. Well, great. Thank you so much. This was a blast.
I thank you for having me on. It was fun chatting with the both of you. Very much so. Thank you.